The provocative title of this video hints at a challenge that perplexes a lot of game historians and archaeologists. When they find something, especially that's an array of scratched out spaces, possibly accompanied by some small glass or clay objects and a quantity, they say, what was it? Was it a game? Was it a common thing or a rarity? How is it related to other similar things? What can we prove, and how shall we fill in the unknown bits? Halatafl is one of those challenges. There are more questions than answers. Let's start with the evidence. A church was first established in Okobo, Sweden in the 14th century. In the 1790s, a new church was being built on the same site as this first church. A large carved slab of stone was found in the foundation wall of the old church, and it was incorporated into the new church at that time. In the 1880s, historians rediscovered the stone and identified it as a very ancient Norse monument. It was mostly covered with drawings and designs with a few words of dedication to the person who commissioned the creation of the stone, along with 3 others. Nobody knows what became of those other 3 stones, but the famous Okobo runestone was destroyed in a fire when the church burned in 1904. In 1932, a reproduction of the stone was made based on the drawings and rubbings that had been taken earlier, and that new stone is on display in front of the Okobo church. Now here's why all this matters to this game idea. Amongst the other carvings on the face of this stone is this. It's an image of 2 people playing a game. But what game could that be? Could it be Hnefatafl, Tablut, Fichnil, Branduf, or something entirely new? Speculation runs wild based on this vague little carving. Here's the boundary board. This was discovered in Ireland, and it dates back to around the 9th century. It's a common configuration for a game board of the time, with large handles on either side to support the board while the game's being played. It's an array of peg holes, and you'll note the etchings on the board itself and compare it to the Okobo image. Most of the archaeological artifacts are fragmentary, and I can't find a sample from a museum collection that really shows the entire board. But the runestone's image doesn't really show any details to know what the array of spaces, if there were any, might have looked like. Early observers of the stone, hundreds of years ago, would probably have known exactly what game that was because of common experience. But 10 centuries later, we're still guessing. Ancient Norse tales and sagas are full of references to board games. Some are very specific, but some are annoyingly vague. Here is a diagram which shows most of the known Taffle game configurations. And you can see they're all very similar. The boards are larger or smaller. The way that the pieces are set up for the games are pretty similar as well. There's even a formula that you can work to determine with a number of squares and how many pieces each side would take to keep the games balanced and so on. And some of the ancient documents refer to a game that they call Halatafl. One translation of that word is heel table. The idea, I guess, is that, like the boundary board, that the heel is the handle on one end of the board. Another interpretation is that the heel is a peg on the bottom of a game piece that fits into the hole. And other folks have said that no, the syllables hala really means tail. And so tail lends some credence to the idea that maybe this board was used to play a Fox and Geese type of game. Now, Fox and Geese is the familiar predator versus prey game that looks like this, and there are variations on that theme all over the planet, and some of those are played on very different boards. So to use a Taffle board for a Fox and Geese game, it's really easy to just ignore the corner spaces. So then you recreate that cruciform shape of the playable spaces, like the traditional European Fox and Geese. So it is possible that a Fox and Geese type of game was played on a Taffle board. And because the Norse had lots of interactions with folks from Central Europe, where the Fox and Geese game was really popular, they'd go back home and they could adapt their existing game apparatus to play that type of game. And they really liked the asymmetrical style of game already from most of their Taffle games, so it's only logical that they would do that. But then there's the notion that it was a more balanced game that was being played on this board. Now here's a page from a book that was commissioned by King Alfonso X of Castile in the 10th century, and the book is a record of a whole lot of different tabletop games that were played at the time. This one is called Alquerques, or Alquerques, or Alquerques with an S on the end. A lot of different names for it. It's basically the precursor of today's checkers. Two forces on opposite sides of the board, and there's a lot of jumping and capturing and so on that go on. And because of the fact that the Vikings were coming down from the Norse countries, and they actually had some regular trade routes that went along the coast of Portugal, it was very, very likely that they would have encountered this particular game, and again, taken it back home and applied that to the boards that they already had. So they could have been playing a jump and capture game. That's the basis for all the speculation about Halatafl being a balanced two-player jump and capture game. So what historians have assumed, just like on our board here, that we use that 7x7 board, eliminate the corner spaces from the initial setup, and leave the center space empty like an Alquerques game, so that each player has 22 pieces that they can play with. And that lends itself very easily to playing an Alquerques style jump and capture game. So let's take a look at some fairly common rules to that game. I call it the armies game because you've got two equal armies there. It's still very controversial, but I present them to you, to game player, to decide for yourself whether you think it's authentically Norse or not. Each player commands a set of 22 pieces, and the board begins with the pieces set up in the halves of the board as shown here. The spaces with squares are left empty. All of the pieces are of equal value and equal power. They can be moved orthogonally forward towards the opposite side of the board, or sideways, left to right. If a piece is resting on one of the diagonal lines at the start of a turn, it may also be moved diagonally one space, but still always forward. Alternatively, a peg may make a short jump over an opponent's peg in a straight line to a vacant intersection adjacent to the counter being jumped. Pegs captured are removed from the board as they are jumped, not waiting till the end of a player's turn. Jumps, like standard moves, are orthogonally forward or sideways, or along the diagonal lines, not backwards. Jumping is mandatory. If a jump can be made, it must be made. So chain jumps, multiple captures in one move, are also mandatory, and the direction may be changed after each enemy counter has been jumped, provided that the direction is always forward or sideways. If there's a choice of jumps, the moving player can decide which to make. If a player does not make the compulsory capture on their turn by failing to notice it, the opponent may then remove the offending piece as a bonus before their next move. This is commonly called huffing. Each player has two corner positions on their side of the board, sometimes called thrones. A player may never move one of their own pieces to a throne on their side of the board, but they may land there temporarily as part of a multi-jump capturing move. Now here's a significant difference in rule sets. In some cases, occupying an opponent's throne instantly wins the game. In others, a player must occupy both opposing thrones to win. And in others, landing on an opponent's throne promotes a piece to a more powerful king rank, not unlike checkers or draughts. So kings can be signified by flipping a piece to its opposite face, or stacking an extra piece on top of another piece, or substituting a different colored peg altogether. These kings move and capture as normal pegs, but may do so in any direction. Kings may also move and rest on any of the thrones on the board, including their own. So there you have it. Now, if you research diligently on the web or in other book sources, you're going to find some other diverse sets of rules to how to play Halatafl. And as I said, sometimes it's Fox and Geese. Sometimes it's just another Taffle game. There's even references that Halatafl was a very, very small Taffle-type game, more like the complexity or lack of complexity of a tic-tac-toe game or a three-men's Morris game. But whichever version you play, be sure to play every day. The study of these Norse Taffle games is very interesting. There's lots of resources on the internet that you can find that talk about all the different variations and the different speculations that have been made over the years. Here's a book on the subject, just on Hnefatafl, and our catalog includes quite a number of Scandinavian-based games. I'll put some links for you down below here. Meanwhile, thanks for tuning in, and I'll be back next week.